A sloth, a donkey, and a curious human. Send a prompt and see what they're doing. One hits record with a question on his mind. Two brothers pick it up, see what they find. Corn takes his time, Herman's got the facts. Back and forth, they never hold back. My weird prompts, come on in, that's where we begin. My weird prompts, glad you're here.
This episode was generated using artificial intelligence. Please verify facts.
My Weird Prompts is a community-driven initiative exploring how AI can fuel curiosity and uncover the fascinating ways our world works. GPU compute for this podcast is generously provided by Modal. Learn more at modal.com.
Hey everyone, welcome back to My Weird Prompts. I am Herman, and I'm sitting here in our living room in Jerusalem with my brother.
Herman Papaberry, at your service, and man, do we have a deep one today. This topic actually started because I was looking for a stapler on Daniel's desk earlier this morning.
Oh, I know exactly where this is going. Our housemate Daniel is a fascinating case study in what we are calling the organization paradox. If you look at his physical desk, it is a disaster area. There are half-finished cups of coffee, stacks of mail from 3 months ago, and I am pretty sure I saw a fossilized orange peel under his monitor yesterday. It looks like a small-scale model of a landfill.
It is a geological excavation site, truly. You could determine the era of his life by how deep you dig into the paper strata. But then, you look at his GitHub repositories. The code is art. Every folder is perfectly nested, every variable is named according to a strict convention, and the documentation is so clean it makes me want to weep with joy. It is the most elegant modular system I have ever seen. There is zero technical debt, zero clutter, and a logic that is almost crystalline.
And that is what Daniel was asking about in this prompt. Why is there such a massive disconnect? Why can someone be a master of digital architecture and absolute chaos in the physical world? It really challenges this idea that organization is just a personality trait or a moral virtue. We have been taught that if you are a tidy person, you are tidy everywhere. But Daniel proves that is a total myth.
We tend to think of people as either organized or messy, like it is a binary switch in your character. But the reality is that organization is a complex executive function process. It is not about being a good person or a disciplined person. It is about how your brain handles the cognitive tax of managing systems. And those taxes vary wildly depending on whether the system is physical or digital.
I think we need to start by deconstructing what I call the productivity industrial complex. There is this massive multi-billion-dollar industry built on selling the idea that if you just buy the right planner, or the right filing cabinet, or the right app, you will finally be a functional human being. It treats tidiness as a moral imperative. It suggests that a clear desk equals a clear mind, and by extension, a messy desk equals a messy, failed life.
It really does. There is a weight of shame attached to a messy desk that you do not see with other things. If you are bad at math, people just say you are not a math person. But if your room is a mess, society tells you that you are lazy, or undisciplined, or that your life is falling apart. It is a manufactured cultural construct designed to monetize our collective anxiety about not being productive enough. It turns a neurological preference into a character flaw.
And for the neurodivergent brain, specifically the ADHD brain, that anxiety is amplified by a factor of 10. We are going to dive into some really interesting research today, including a study from November 2025 in the journal Brain Sciences that identifies organization in time as a completely distinct executive function from spatial organization. This is a massive breakthrough because it explains why Daniel can build a perfect folder structure, which is spatial and logical, but can't remember to throw away an orange peel, which is a temporal maintenance task.
That is such a crucial distinction. It explains why you can have a perfectly organized spreadsheet but still forget to pay your electric bill. One is a spatial logical system and the other is a temporal management system. They use different parts of the brain. When we talk about organization, we are usually lumping 5 or 6 different brain processes into one word, which is why we get so confused when they don't all work at the same time.
This leads us perfectly into the neurological side of things. When we talk about ADHD, we are often talking about a disorder of self-regulation across time. That is a framework popularized by Russell Barkley, and it is vital for understanding this. Barkley argues that ADHD isn't an attention problem, it's a point of performance problem. If your brain struggles to project itself into the future, the mundane tasks of today feel irrelevant compared to the high dopamine stimulation of a complex problem.
Right, and that brings us back to Daniel's code versus Daniel's desk. Writing code is intellectually stimulating. It provides immediate feedback. You solve a bug, you get a hit of dopamine. It is a high-interest environment. Filing a stack of papers or clearing off a desk. That is low dopamine, repetitive and mundane. For an ADHD brain, the cognitive cost of starting a boring task is much higher than the cost of starting a fascinating one. The brain literally refuses to allocate the energy because the reward-to-effort ratio is too low.
There is also the issue of object permanence, or what some researchers call out of sight, out of mind. In a digital environment, everything is searchable. You do not need to remember where you put a file because you can just hit Command Space and find it. The system handles the retrieval for you. The digital world is essentially a flat, searchable plane where distance doesn't exist.
But in the physical world, if Daniel puts his keys in a drawer to keep the counter tidy, those keys effectively cease to exist for him. He cannot search his drawer with a keyboard. This is why people with ADHD often become pilers rather than filers. A pile is a visual spatial storage system. I can see the blue envelope, so I know the bill is there. If I put it in a folder labeled Utilities, it is gone forever. It has entered the void.
That is such a great way to put it. The pile is an active memory cache. The file cabinet is deep storage that requires a functioning index in the brain to access later. If that index is shaky, you trust the pile more than the folder. We actually touched on some of these mechanisms of executive function and task drift back in episode 8065. If you are interested in the deeper brain mechanics of why we drift away from boring tasks into Wikipedia rabbit holes, that is a great one to revisit.
I remember that one. But what is new since then is this 2025 review in Frontiers in Neuroscience about neural oscillations. They found that people with ADHD often have a specific dysregulation in their alpha and theta waves during task transitions. It is literally a hardware glitch when trying to shift from a high-focus state to a maintenance state. When Daniel finishes a coding session, his brain is humming in a high-frequency state. Shifting down to clean the desk requires a massive neurological gear change that his brain just isn't wired to do smoothly.
It is like trying to shift a sports car into gear, but the clutch is slipping. You can see the gear you need to be in, you are revving the engine, but the car is not moving. This is why the "I know I should, but I cannot" phenomenon is so real. It is not a lack of willpower. It is a neurological disconnect between the intention and the action. And when you add the cultural pressure to be tidy on top of that neurological struggle, you get what is called the shame cascade.
The shame cascade is the real killer. You see the mess, you feel ashamed that you cannot fix it. That shame makes the task feel even more painful, because now the desk is a physical monument to your perceived failure, so you avoid it, which makes the mess worse, which increases the shame. It becomes a radioactive zone in your house that you just stop looking at because the emotional cost of acknowledging it is too high.
And this is why I think we need to distinguish between performance and function. Are you organizing for social legibility, meaning you want your desk to look clean so your boss thinks you are a professional? Or are you organizing for retrieval needs, meaning you just need to be able to find your stapler? Most of our societal standards are built around social legibility, the look of order, rather than the utility of order.
That is a vital question for the modern workplace. We have seen this move toward rigid clean desk policies in big corporations. But look at the Gallup 2025 workplace engagement data. They found a direct correlation between highly restrictive physical environment policies and increased burnout in creative and technical roles. When you force a piler to be a filer, you are forcing them to use a massive amount of cognitive energy just to maintain a facade of order. That is energy they are not using on their actual work.
It is a top-down, one-size-fits-all approach that ignores how different brains actually function. I think this is where we can get a bit political too. There is a certain type of corporate authoritarianism that views personal workspace as company property that must be sanitized. It is about control and uniformity rather than actual productivity. As conservatives, we should value individual agency and the idea that people should be judged on their output, not on whether their pens are lined up in a tray.
If the code is perfect and the deadlines are met, why do I care if there is a pile of laundry in the corner of your home office? The result is what matters. This obsession with the aesthetics of productivity over the reality of productivity is a weirdly collectivist way of looking at work. It demands that everyone conform to a single standard of what a good worker looks like, which is usually based on the brain of a 1950s middle manager.
It is also worth noting that the history of this is fascinating. We talked about the evolution of human order back in episode 816, from ancient scrolls to modern databases. Humans have always tried to categorize the world to make it manageable, but we have moved from functional categorization to moral categorization. Aristotle categorized animals to understand biology. Modern productivity gurus categorize desks to judge character. It is a massive leap that is not supported by the science.
Let's talk about some of the tools people use to fight this. David Allen's Getting Things Done, or GTD, is the gold standard for many. And interestingly, it is incredibly popular among people with ADHD, even though it was not designed for them. It is popular because it promises an external brain. The core tenet of GTD is getting everything out of your head and into a trusted system.
For someone with a struggling prefrontal cortex, that sounds like a miracle. But the problem is that GTD requires a massive amount of maintenance. You have to do weekly reviews, you have to categorize every single item, you have to maintain the system. It assumes you have the executive function to maintain the system that is supposed to help your executive function. It is a bit of a catch-22. We actually discussed this in episode 459 about the rise of autonomous scheduling agents.
The dream is to have a system that does not require you to be organized to stay organized, and we are getting closer to that. There was some fascinating research in December 2025 about AI-assisted executive function. They are developing tools that act as a persistent external prefrontal cortex. These are not just to-do lists. They are agents that understand your context and your organizational signature.
Like an agent that sees you have a meeting in 20 minutes and reminds you to find your keys now because it knows you usually lose them. Or an agent that automatically categorizes your digital files based on the content so you never have to file anything again. It bridges that gap between the high-level goal and the mundane physical reality. It takes the maintenance tax off the human brain and puts it on the silicon.
That is the future. We are moving away from the idea that everyone needs to train their brain to be a certain way and moving toward building environments that accommodate our specific cognitive signatures. I love that term, organizational signature. It is much more accurate. My signature might be digital folders and physical piles. Your signature might be a clean desk, but a chaotic inbox. Neither is wrong if they are functional.
I also want to bring up Ned Hallowell's perspective here. He often talks about ADHD as having a Ferrari engine for a brain but with bicycle brakes. The organization struggle is just the brakes failing to keep up with the speed of the engine. It is not that the engine is broken, it is just that the control systems are mismatched for the terrain. If you have a Ferrari engine, you are going to win the race if you are on a track that suits you, like a complex coding project. But if you are trying to drive that Ferrari through a narrow, cluttered alleyway of physical chores, you are going to crash.
And that brings us to the pilers versus filers distinction again. There is a psychological comfort in the pile for certain types of visual thinkers. It is a three-dimensional map of their recent history. The top of the pile is today, the middle is last week, the bottom is last month. It is a temporal record in physical form. If you take that pile away and put it in a drawer, you have destroyed their map. You have not made them more organized. You have made them functionally blind.
This is why forced office cleanups are often so devastating for creative types. They lose their spatial anchors. They aren't being messy for the sake of it. They are building a physical externalization of their current cognitive state. When you clear the desk, you clear their working memory. It is the equivalent of someone coming along and deleting all the open tabs in your browser while you are in the middle of a research project.
We should also mention Marie Kondo here. She is the face of the modern tidiness movement, but even she had a bit of a pivot recently, didn't she? After having children, she admitted that her house is now messy, and that she realized spending time with her family was more important than having a perfectly curated bookshelf. That was a huge moment for the culture.
It was a rare admission from the high priestess of tidiness that life is messy and that perfection is an impossible and often undesirable goal. It was a move from tidiness as a virtue to tidiness as a tool. If the tool is too expensive to maintain, you stop using it. The cost-benefit analysis of organization is something people rarely talk about. If it takes me 4 hours to organize my office so that I save 10 minutes a day looking for things, it will take me 24 workdays just to break even on that time investment.
For many people, being a little messy is actually the more efficient choice. We've been taught that organization saves time, but we rarely account for the time it takes to stay organized. For a neurotypical person, that cost is low. For an ADHD person, that cost is astronomical. It is like paying a 50% tax on every minute of your day just to keep your desk clear. Why would you pay that tax if you don't have to?
It is a cognitive tax, and in a world that is increasingly demanding of our attention, we have to be very careful where we spend that currency. I would rather Daniel spend his cognitive energy writing that beautiful code than worrying about where his stapler is. Although he did eventually find the stapler, right?
He did. It was in the fridge. Don't ask me why.
See, that is the ADHD brain in a nutshell. You go to get a glass of water, you realize you are holding a stapler, you open the fridge, and your brain just decides that is where the stapler lives now because it is focused on the water. It is a context switch error. His brain was already 3 steps ahead, thinking about the next function he was going to write, and the physical object in his hand became an afterthought.
It is the drift. We talked about this in episode 865. The brain is so eager to get to the high dopamine task that it just drops the low dopamine task midstream. The stapler in the fridge isn't a sign of madness. It's a sign of a brain that is moving faster than its physical environment can keep up with.
We have talked a lot about the challenges, but I want to pivot to some practical takeaways. How do we move forward without the shame? The first thing I think is embracing what we called retrieval-based organization. Stop asking, does this look tidy? And start asking, can I find this when I need it? If the answer is yes, then you are organized enough. You do not need to satisfy anyone else's aesthetic standards.
And if you can't find it, then you look for the specific point of failure. Is it because you don't have a consistent place for it? Or is it because the place you chose is too hard to get to? That is the low friction principle. If you want to keep your keys in a certain spot, that spot needs to be directly in your natural path when you walk through the door. If you have to walk across the room to put them in a decorative bowl, you will never do it. The system has to serve the human, not the other way around.
I also think we need to leverage the AI tools we mentioned. If you are struggling with executive function, stop trying to use a paper planner if it is not working. Use the digital tools that can actually prompt you, remind you, and search for you. Embrace the external brain. We are living in 2026. We have the technology to compensate for these neurological gaps. There is no reason to suffer through a 1950s system when we have 21st century solutions.
And for the love of everything, stop moralizing the desk. A messy desk is not a character flaw. It is just a workspace. If you are productive and you are happy, the state of your physical environment is secondary. We should also mention that if you are a manager or a leader, give your people the freedom to organize their own space. The Gallup data is clear. Autonomy breeds engagement. Forcing a specific organizational style on your team is a recipe for burnout and resentment.
It is about respecting the diversity of human cognition. We talk a lot about diversity in other areas, but cognitive diversity is just as important. Some people need silence and a clear space to think. Others need music and a pile of books around them. Both can be world-class performers. The future of work is going to belong to the people who understand their own brains and build systems that support them, rather than trying to fit into a mold that was never meant for them.
I think that is a perfect place to start wrapping this up. We are moving from a world of moralizing tidiness to a world of optimizing for individual signatures. We are moving from "you are lazy" to "your brain has a different frequency." That is a much more compassionate and, frankly, more scientific way to live.
Well said. And hey, if you found this exploration of the ADHD brain and organization helpful, we would really appreciate it if you could leave us a review on your podcast app or on Spotify. It genuinely helps other people find the show and helps us keep doing this. We have over 1,100 episodes now, and we are still going strong because of your support.
It really does. And if you want to dive deeper into our archive, you can search for anything from AI for ADHD in episode 879 to our deep dive on sensory overload in episode 435. Just head over to myweirdprompts.com. You can find the full RSS feed there and a searchable database of all our topics.
You can also find our Telegram channel by searching for My Weird Prompts. We post there every time a new episode drops, and we often share the research papers we talk about on the show. It is a great way to stay connected and see the data for yourself.
Thanks to Daniel for sending in this prompt. It gave us a lot to think about, even if I am still a little worried about that stapler in the fridge. I think I might go check the freezer for his wallet just in case.
I will go move the stapler back to his desk. Or maybe I will just leave it there and see how long it takes him to notice. It might become a new form of modern art.
That is a different experiment for a different day. Thanks for listening to My Weird Prompts. We will be back soon with another deep dive into the strange and fascinating prompts that come our way.
Until next time, keep your systems functional, whatever they look like. Don't let the productivity industrial complex get you down.
We will see you in the next one. This has been My Weird Prompts. Goodbye, everyone.
Take care.
I am still thinking about that fossilized orange peel, Herman. We should probably do something about that. It might be sentient by now.
I think it is part of the ecosystem now, Corn. We have to respect the biodiversity of the house. It is a living laboratory.
At point. All right, let's get out of here.
See ya.
Bye.
So, when we look at the broader implications of this, especially in the context of the next decade, do you think we will see a total collapse of the traditional office supply industry? I mean, if everyone moves to digital agents and retrieval-based systems, who is buying the 3-ring binders?
It is a good question. I think we will see a shift toward high-end, tactile, aesthetic items. The people who choose to be organized in the physical world will do it as a form of self-expression, like fountain pens or mechanical keyboards. It will be a hobby, not a requirement. The binder will become the new vinyl record.
Like an artisanal organization. I can see that. It becomes a luxury to have a perfectly tidy, minimalist space, rather than a baseline expectation for every worker. It is a choice, not a chore.
It is the move from utility to status, and honestly, that might be a healthier place for it. If it is a choice you make because you enjoy the aesthetic, that is great. Just don't tell me I have to do it to be a professional.
I think that is the key, autonomy and agency. Whether it is in our homes in Jerusalem or in a high-tech office in Tel Aviv or New York, the person doing the work should be the one who decides how that work gets organized.
Amen to that.
All right, for real this time, let's wrap it up.
Ready when you are.
Thanks again for joining us on My Weird Prompts. We will be back soon with another deep dive.
See you then.
Always mais. Bye.
Take care.
And don't forget to check out the website at myweirdprompts.com for the RSS feed and more.
And the Telegram channel?
Right, the Telegram channel. Search for My Weird Prompts.
Okay, now we are actually done.
Signing off.
Goodbye.
This episode was generated using Gemini Flash 3. Text-to-speech engine was Chatterbox.
Thanks for listening to our show, My Weird Prompts, where our thoughts go from slow takes to facts on cue. We change.